Hi listeners, welcome to my channel. On 19th of November at 3:57 am Eastern Time, Sun in Scorpio will oppose Moon in Taurus at 27°14' as a partial lunar eclipse. The nodes have not yet ingressed into Scorpio and Taurus, so this full moon in Taurus would be a preview of the time to come versus the full reveal. We would only see the full impact of this full moon by mid or end of February 2022 during and after the Winter Olympics in Beijing, and that would also be the time when Pluto return of United States would become exact. Like all eclipses, this would bring some history to light. This specific eclipse dates back to 20th of November 2002 with activation in June or July of 2003. This was the period of SARS outbreak, which was declared on 16th of November 2002 and it was declared to have ended July of 2003. So this period from now to February of 2022 could look like a parallel of the SARS outbreak, which was declared between 16th of November 2002 and ended on July of 2003. But what would follow it would be another fated event, in my view, which would be linked with India, Pakistan, and China. In February of 2021, when Mars in Taurus transited the eclipse point, we saw the reports of first case of 𝗏598 avian flu transmission to humans. It was also the period when calls for 2022 Winter Olympics to be moved from Beijing due to allegation of UYGHUR genocide, it came up. We'll see the themes from February of 2021, especially the conflicting themes from February of 2021 coming back for reconsiderations and mentions from now to February of 2022. This eclipse, it falls on the critical axis of China, the 4th house, and it also falls on North Node of India as well as North Node of Pakistan, which usually comes with turning point events which are surprising and fated for the country. The period from now to end of February 2022 will be a build-up to that event. Pakistan and India, they both have their North Node at this degree of eclipse, which is linked to an evil star called Algol, and they both would be strongly influenced through fated events, in my view, initiated from end of February 2022 or early March 2022, which could continue all the way till May of 2022. The period from end February 2022 or early March 2022 all the way till May 2022 is when the second eclipse, which is happening on the opposite side in Scorpio at the similar degree, would get activated. This would also be true for China, though the nature of the events in China may not be the same. And the events linked to China could also show up from now to February 2022 as they did during SARS. There will be two eclipses simultaneously activated in end February or early March 2022, which would make that a key fated turning point, especially related to India, China, and Pakistan. Though the eclipse that's happening right now, it does form a fixed T-square with the moon of United States in Aquarius, which indicates an ideological gridlock in United States. But United States would be more influenced by the eclipse of 4th of December 2021. The next eclipse, which is a solar eclipse, which is happening on 4th of December 2021 at 12°22' of Sagittarius, it falls on ascendant of United States. And that second eclipse is conjunct fixed star Antares. Antares is known for rebirth through wars. It is the holy warrior. So the second eclipse, which is a solar eclipse which comes with an initiation, it already had a fated event happen. It was already activated because the nodes have been in Sagittarius for the last 2 years. The event linked to 4th of December 2021, that already got activated in April 2021 when we saw withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. We could see United States decide to replace the war efforts in Afghanistan with another country, and that's a whole separate topic of discussion. For the current lunar eclipse, we could see parallel of events from November 2002 to June, July 2003, then going back further to September, October 1984 to May of 1985, and the first half of 1966. These are history of the eclipses of this specific Taurus eclipse. All of these eclipses, the period from November 2002 to July 2003, September, October 1984 to May 1985, and the first half of 1966, they all had fated events happen in India and China. And we are going to see a build-up of that fated event from now to February of 2022. As I said, February of 2021, when Mars was transiting the degree of this eclipse, it might have given us hints of those events, even in our personal capacity, as we would have actively worked on something back then. In personal capacity for near history, we could look at chapters from 2015 coming for a shift or closure right now, as we have been discussing in the previous lunations as well. Considering this series of eclipse, this Taurus eclipse, it falls on fixed star Algol, which is considered in some ways unfortunate or evil of the stars. We could expect a global event which could be perceived as a step back or a setback. But that's a very limited view of what this star and this full moon could bring, because it does hold great potential and energy which we in our individual capacity can productively use. Every eclipse holds potential of positive growth and change in our life. Changes that through purely our push would take many years to pan out. This eclipse, it comes with a T-square, and that's always a choice that we need to make. With the apex of Jupiter of this T-square, we could choose growth. We would focus on that growth and potential today. Today's reading would be in podcast format. My name is Charu. I'm your host on this journey. Let's begin. Moon is exalted very strong in Taurus. It adds steadiness to our emotions in uncertain times. Warmth of good food, time with family, quiet, reflective, resolve of actions for long term, which are measured and consistent. There is no changing the resolves that are made under this full moon. We resonate with the nature and the earth below our feet and the aroma that is surrounding us. It's the fest of all senses, appreciating the stability, the consistency some of the traditional and valuable corners of our life offer us, as we make way for the new traditions. Earth moons, they urge us to be useful, to be of value. Purposeful activity needs to follow. But that activity is at slow or even leisurely pace of a Taurian. But it's consistent, its determination of action to create something solid of value. This is a sensual full moon, which stimulates our senses to want more and reach out for physical sensual pleasures and unabashed gain pleasure from what brings your senses gratification. When sun and moon oppose each other, we have a full moon, but there is a balance or lack of balance that is exposed to us, the dark and the light, and the balance between that. The two opposite sides of our psyche, they come to life. With Sun in Scorpio and Moon in Taurus, the balance or imbalance that's highlighted with this eclipse is one between the conscious and the unconscious. The material versus the emotional or the soul, the shoulds of our life and the wants of our life. If we satisfy one at the cost of the other, there is an imbalance which will come to light with this. If you satisfy your want, you would receive the emotional satisfaction, but we feel anxious, or life feels out of control in some ways. This is the earth element calling you for balancing out. It's calling out to be compensated and balanced out. But if we satisfy the shoulds of our life too much, at the expense of the wants, we could feel in control of our life, but the life can feel empty or shallow or without any meaning. That's the water element imbalance, calling out to be compensated. This full moon and eclipse is an opportunity to observe which side of our life is tilting. Where is the imbalance between the wants and the shoulds? As we have an opportunity to synthesize the two sides of our life over this process of next 3 months and balance them out by not drowning in either. As the apex of the T-square, which is formed during this eclipse, is in Jupiter, which is a conscious mental planet, we might need to objectively look at gains and outcome or growth and influence or contribution from what we are creating. Objectively looking at the growth potential is the solution to this push and pull that we are feeling. And I'm going to go deeper into that in a minute. Taurus eclipses, they are financial eclipses. And they are earth eclipses. They are about protecting something. We are on the heels of 2 years of accelerated changes in protectionism, as well as the North Node once it moves into Taurus, changes that will normally take many years to come. They will come in a matter of months and years when we are going to see eclipses back to back in Taurus and Scorpio, which will bring about changes in financial industry, stock markets, real estate assets, world currencies, business, economy, earth surface events, seismic events, earth magnetic field changes, shifts in earth resources, crops, farming, corn, weather. The advances and the changes that we haven't seen in years will come in matter of weeks and months over the course of next 2 years, with North Node moving into Taurus on 18th of January 2022. Changes would have long-term impact because they are initiated in fixed signs. As a first eclipse in Taurus, this eclipse would activate the first event, which in my view would fully be revealed only in February of 2022, and it will be a precursor to the events that will follow over the course of next 2 years. What's not very appreciated about the Taurus eclipses is the enhanced spiritual intuition and the insight that we will be offered about these events about to come. The spiritual intuition and the insights, they are very grounded in Taurus eclipses. And they're very physically felt. They're physically real. There is a magnetic physical pull to what we are supposed to move to what would benefit you materially, whether it is in food or people or changes of physical nature. You will find your intuition physically pulling you towards those things. Our sensory influences, they are heightened from vibrations, from sounds, from music, from taste, from touch, from hearing, from magnetic fields of electronics or earth. Radiations influence us more during this eclipse. The earth and the soil, they speak louder. Our senses are heightened during the Taurus eclipse, and we physically feel the changes that are about to come in our life. And they are long-term changes. There are some financial changes, earthquakes and flood potentials that Taurus lunar eclipse holds within it. Storage and swelling, they're common of water bodies as well as our own body, which is made up of water as well. In terms of physical influence of this eclipse, because it will be very physical in nature, there's a swelling of emotions that happen when you have a lunar eclipse versus a solar eclipse. And it's the emotions within us which physically ultimately influence us. During a Taurus eclipse, the physical influence will be felt in the ENT area of our body, ear, nose and throat, teeth, the jaw area of the face, the thyroid gland, the neck and the shoulder, as we have discussed previously as well. Those are sensitive points which we need to be careful about. And hormonal changes and shifts, especially for women, which can create pressure during this time. Keep it light, emotionally, physically, keep it light. Avoid overeating during the period of influence of this eclipse. Stay off anything foreign or chemical or toxic. Of course, everything under a medical practitioner's guidance. This is not medical advice, but what I know astrologically, we need to be a little bit physically careful in terms of interacting with anything that can be deemed toxic by our body. History truly cannot be guide of this eclipse because we did not have Uranus in Taurus last time we had North Node or any of these eclipses in Taurus. So the period when North Node was last in Taurus, which we are going to experience over the course of next 2 years, when from January 2022, North Node will move into North Node, or Rahu will move into Taurus. That last happened in 2003 and 2004. So the fated events that ensued from 15th of April 2003 to 26th of December 2004, though we can look at parallels in terms of personal growth plans, global events may not be exactly parallel. But in your personal capacity, if you're old enough, you could look at how the next 2 years in terms of growth paths would look like. What kind of fated events can open up for us? Now that is a bit history. 2003 and 2004 is a little bit of a history for all of us. In near history, you could look at the period of 2013, specifically starting from 31st of August 2012 to 18th of February 2014. That's the period when South Node was in Taurus. So the polarity of the nodes was exchanged. You would find that there were certain growth lessons and chapters or initiations from that period of 18th of August 2012 to 18th of February 2014 that would be coming for maturation, so you can move to the next growth path. There might be a release of some of the chapters from 2013 as well. You could also, for this specific eclipse, so the period from November especially to February period, what kind of parallels you would see, especially in these next 3 months, You could look at the specific period from November of 2002 to July of 2003. As I said, from global events perspective, that was the period of SARS, and India experienced certain fated events in form of serial bomb blasts in Mumbai at that time. Fated events from November of 2002 to July of 2003, they included SARS outbreak, serial bomb blasts in Mumbai. US Fed moved to negative interest rates, so there was a financial event for US during that time. There was a campaign against climate change, earth events, and uprising towards that in London. Homeland Security Act was signed. This is about security. This is about guarding your assets, creating a new kind of security and safety. There was a violent, intense earthquake in Alaska at that time. So seismic events, essentially earthquake-related events, which are linked to Taurus eclipses. Those were experienced in the last eclipse which we had. The physical aspects of this eclipse are very phenomenal, just as the astrological ones are. This would be the longest eclipse in about 600 years. The longest eclipse since 15th century or 1440 to be exact, which will be visible from the entire North and South of America as well as Australia. Visibility and duration, it affects because if you would see, the tides are influenced by full moon. So if the duration of the eclipse is longer, the physical impact, especially where the eclipse is visible, there is a more intense or visible physical impact of that eclipse. This eclipse is part of Saros series 126, which repeats every 18 years, which indicates global events of 9th of November 2003 would be relevant for this eclipse. That was the period of great conflict of Iraq with US forces. As I said, there is a possibility that US will replace Afghanistan with another country, the war efforts with another country. Now, it cannot be Iraq because the Saros series it shifts geographically. The area of influence, in my view, moves. So it should not be the same. You would find that with the solar eclipse that is ahead of us on 4th of December, which is conjunct a fixed star, which precedes a war effort, we could see US replacing Afghanistan with another country. As I said earlier as well, the 4th of December eclipse is all about replacing a previous initiation, something which was released in April. We are starting something else in place of that with the 4th of December eclipse. So we are talking of a financial event, a military operation, and an earth event which is linked to this eclipse ahead of us, panning out till end February or early March 2022 in terms of global impact. And what will follow after that, as I said, is the Scorpio eclipse, which in my view would impact India, China, and Pakistan greatly. The two eclipses together, the one that we have right now and the one that we have in May of 2022, the Scorpio eclipse and the Taurus eclipse, they are going to activate together end of February and early March of 2022. So that period would be a critical fated period with slew of stuck-up events happening together like something unplugs. In terms of personal influence, as I said, in your individual capacity, you can draw parallels from period from November of 2002 to July of 2003. Since that period, as I said, is literally history for most of us, I would look at chapters from more recent period. For this specific eclipse, look at May, June 2015, which is coming to conclusion. 2015, as I said, there is a series of lunations, new moon and full moon, which are happening, which are like a closure of 2015. So again, with this eclipse, you will find a surge of an event, a closure of an event from 2015. It's not a parallel, it's a closure, or you taking a different path instead of something that you initiated in 2015. In terms of the military operations, wars, as I've said, they could look very different in the current times. Because, Uranus right now is in Taurus, and very definition of Uranus and Taurus is how we protect and make ourselves feel safe. So one kind of safety comes from how we earn money and what kind of currency we use. So that, of course, changes with Uranus and Taurus that we are experiencing right now, but also how we fight those wars in terms of how we protect in terms of global events, that changes as well. A chapter of our life that used to make us feel safe, it usually comes to an end with this eclipse. But because North Node will be moving into Taurus, that safety will be replaced with something. Something will be given to us, which will be a part of our future growth, and it will be replaced in place of what you're letting go or completing right now. It will be given, in my view, to us by February of 2022. That's in individual capacity. I'll talk briefly about Algol, which is the star, which is fixed star, which is attached to it. The fixed star Algol, which this eclipse interacts with, it is closely historically linked with murders, beheading, violence, intense events, and sometimes disasters. That's why there is an undertone of setback in terms of global events linked to this. It's called the head of the demon by Arabs, the brightest star in the Gorgon's head by Ptolemy, and the piled up corpses by Chinese. All of them link the star to bloody violence. India has its North Node in the 12th house conjunct this star. So this eclipse, which is going to interact with the North Node of India and Pakistan, it could especially come with some sort of hidden attack and an unexpected loss. And due to the involvement of the node of the country, the events can be very surprising, unexpected, and fated in nature, and they'll pan out, in my view, from end of February 2022 to May of 2022. The last time we saw these series of eclipses, and I'll go back to, as I said, in 2002, 2003, we had that series of bomb blasts in Mumbai when we had a lunar eclipse. Even in February of 2021, when Mars was activating the current eclipse, we saw the COVID-19 deaths, they soar in India. And if you go back in history to 1966 and 1984, both of these years we had solar eclipse at this degree. And both were the years of Prime Minister of India unexpectedly passing away. But that time solar eclipse was happening in 1966 and 1984. Over years, this series of eclipses has changed from being a solar eclipse to a lunar eclipse, which means that the impact is not focused on just the Prime Minister, in my view. This impacts the people of the country. So I would be physically a little bit careful during this time. This eclipse would be, as I said, activated mid of February 2022 through events leading to it. And events leading to it will start becoming evident from end of November or early December, when South Node will interact with the ascendant of India. This also sits on the 4th house cusp of China. And as I've said before, it timed with the SARS outbreak in 2002. And I do believe that this is a key eclipse, not just for mainland China, but also Hong Kong. 1984, with the activation of this eclipse as a solar eclipse, we saw Hong Kong being promised to be returned to China, with the treaty coming into effect on 27th of May 1985 during the exact eclipse. The 4th house cusp, where China is to see this eclipse on 19th of November, which will be activated in February 2022, in mundane astrology, normally comes with events linked to nations' security, assets, natural resources, agriculture, minerals, housing, real estate, natural calamities, and communal harmony amongst people. Very, very key. Communal harmony amongst people. The nature of this eclipse has, as I said, changed from solar to lunar since 2002. I do believe that changes the focus and the intensity of it. A solar eclipse is definitely much more physically felt. It is more intense as compared to lunar. Lunar impacts the people more, and it's more emotional, uprising versus the physical impact that the solar eclipse has. Another perspective of this fixed star is the passions and the energy associated with it, which links to my point of this eclipse, evoking strong emotions. It represents power unleashed. Algol is linked with feminine Kundalini release. So beyond the beheading, assassinations, being shot in the head, which is associated with this fixed star, an unfortunate, brutal incident, there's also possibility in our individual capacity of passionate creative creations, all-consuming passions. It represents as female demon or immense female passion or power, the power of the feminine. It embodies everything that men fear in a feminine power. It shows a feminine uprising. It's linked to Lilith, passionate lover, whore, the wild, the raw, the frightening face of outraged feminine energy, which is deemed as evil, as it has power to both give birth as well as to destroy. It's like the power of Mother Nature, which can be perceived as evil for being powerful, and in that power being perceived to be destroying or disrupting life as well. This star does fall on the key points and planets of men like Malcolm X, African-American Muslim minister and human rights activist who was assassinated, Nicholas II, last Tsar of Russia who was executed, Ayatollah Khomeini, the fanatic Iranian revolutionary leader, or Johnny Depp's Venus. So I have seen with men, there is some amount of violence attached to the star if it is prominent in their in their chart. But there needs to be other, you cannot just place something purely on the basis of a star, of a fixed star. There need to be aspects supporting it. For example, in case of Malcolm X, he had Mars-Uranus aspects playing out as well. We could see, unfortunately, violence because Mars-Uranus aspect, as I mentioned in the previous reading, is attached with this eclipse. In women, I have seen the star to have its classic Kundalini release, wild passion qualities, which this eclipse would activate, the feminine uprising, owning her power. And we could see that in women, we can see that in a prominent women, we can see that in women in general, or we can see that in feminine power in every individual, creative feminine power in every individual. Let's look at how we individually use this for our benefit based on the aspects that are playing out.